Series 2, Part 2, The New Alliance. In the dwindling light of a cold evening, Captain Harris reviewed the fortifications of the outpost. His mind was heavy with the reports from the scouts that had come in earlier that day. Eldur and his undead army were on the move and would reach them within days. The atmosphere in the camp was tense, with every survivor bracing for the imminent attack. Plans for evacuation were hastily drawn up, with routes and contingencies discussed in quiet, urgent meetings. Time passed with anxious preparation, the shadow of Eldur's approaching horde looming over every action. It was during one of these fraught evenings that the unexpected happened. 10 strangers appeared at the gates of the outpost, their hands raised in peace. "We come in peace," one of them declared calmly. The guards, wary but curious, frisked them for weapons but found nothing. Allowed inside, the strangers were led to a makeshift council room where Captain Harris and other leaders of the outpost waited. "Who are you?" Captain Harris asked, his voice steady but filled with the fatigue of endless challenges. The leader of the strangers stepped forward, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a commanding presence. "My name is Lycan," he said. "We are a pack who lives in peace not far from here. We escaped many months ago from our pack leader, the Alpha. We did not agree with the Alpha's ways. At first, we were unable to resist the Alpha's will. Then, we were affected by some greenish substance that the others were feeding on. It changed others into hideous, grotesque abominations, but it simply changed our minds to resist the Alpha's primal commands. It also rendered us immune to the virus of the undead and gave us another ability." The leaders exchanged looks of skepticism and intrigue. "You speak of packs and alphas as if you were animals. What are you? And where is this alpha now?" asked one of the leaders, her eyes narrowing in suspicion. "We are Lycan, werewolves," Lycan replied calmly, "but with the ability to change at will. We are not subject to the moon or trapped in the beast's rage. We left the Alpha months ago and travelled many days to find a safe place where we could live in peace. But now the undead marching here threaten our peace. We feel we would have a better chance if we work together." The camp leaders were taken aback. The werewolves were all killed off with the virus, and they were savage, Captain Harris remarked, his tone mixed with doubt and hope. "But if what you say is true, can you prove it?" With a confident smile, Lycan stood. His body began to transform before their eyes. Muscles bulged, his stature grew, and fur sprang across his skin. In moments, where a man once stood, there now towered a huge, muscular werewolf. Despite the fearsome appearance, there was a clear sense of intelligence in his eyes, something that had indeed changed these feral werewolves to think as humans, even in their beastly form. The room fell silent, every survivor staring in a mixture of fear and awe. Here was a creature of legend, offering not only proof of his nature, but also an alliance. In a world torn apart by the undead, this new alliance could mean their survival, or it could be another dangerous gamble. The leaders had a crucial decision to make, with little time to make it. The icy winds howled across the frozen wasteland as the 10 Lycan raced to confront the undead horde advancing towards the outpost. Enhanced by the bioweapon used by their former Alpha, these Lycan possessed not only resistance to the undead virus, but the remarkable ability to change form at will and retain their cognitive functions even in their beast form. As they sped on all fours across the stark landscape, their powerful limbs propelling them with graceful ferocity, they were a majestic sight. Soon, the grim reality of their mission came into view. A vast, shuffling wall of decay. The undead moved en masse, an unstoppable tide of moaning figures that stretched as far as the eye could see. Lycan, the leader of the Lycan, glanced over at Sarah, his second in command, who was in her formidable Lycan form. A strange smile formed on his mouth, a mix of grim determination and a wild thrill at the challenge ahead. Then, without a word, he led the charge. The confrontation was brutal and swift. Despite their massive numbers, the undead were no match for the ferocity of the werewolves. Lycan and his pack tore through the horde with devastating efficiency. Their sharp claws and powerful jaws ripped through the rotting flesh of their foes, sending limbs and decayed bodies scattering across the snow. The undead, driven by a basic and mindless hunger, could not strategize or retreat. They pressed forward, only to be met with the Lycans' relentless assault. The werewolves moved as a coordinated unit, their years of pack hunting allowing them to anticipate each other's movements and create openings for devastating attacks. They slashed and tore through the horde, their growls and snarls a fearsome symphony amidst the groans of the undead. However, even their enhanced abilities had limits. After a significant time battling, fatigue began to take its toll on Lycan and his team. Realizing they could only thin the numbers and not stop the horde entirely, Lycan let out a piercing howl, the signal for retreat. Turning on their heels, the 10 Lycan sprinted back toward the safety of the outpost, their bodies heavy with exhaustion, but their spirits lifted by their small victory. As they reached the outpost, the guards quickly opened the gates, letting them in. They transformed back into their human forms, each one catching their breath, their chests heaving from exertion. Sarah immediately approached the leaders of the outpost, her expression serious. "We've managed to thin them out, but it's not enough. They'll be here in about 3 to 4 hours, she reported. "We need to rest if we're to be of any use in the coming fight." Captain Harris and Commander Lewis nodded in understanding. They began to prepare their remaining fighters, fortifying their positions and readying themselves for the imminent attack by the undead. The outpost braced for what might be their last stand, the air tense with the anticipation of battle. The partnership with the Lycan had given them a fleeting advantage, but the true test of their alliance was yet to come. The tension at the outpost was palpable as the guard on watch sounded the alarm. "They're here!" As the defenders looked over the wall, the shuffling wave of death and decay edged forward, a slow tsunami of undead threatening to engulf them. Lycan, Sarah, and the other members of the Lycan pack were poised for battle. Despite the brief rest, their eyes burned with a fierce determination to protect their newfound allies. Captain Harris lined up his men, knowing all too well that their ammunition was limited. "Make every bullet count," he ordered solemnly. Fighters, stationed at the walls, gripped their long, makeshift spears, ready to keep the undead at bay. Even with the Lycan's help, the odds seemed daunting. Captain Harris turned to Lycan, seeking a deeper connection in the heat of the impending battle. "What do we call you and your pack?" he asked. Lycan met his gaze, a grim resolve in his eyes. "Wolfpack," he responded simply. As the undead came within range, every armed guard began firing, each shot bringing down an undead. But soon, ammunition levels were critically low, and Harris had to make a tough call. "Cease fire! Save the remaining rounds for a last stand," he commanded. The guards were now to engage in close combat. At that critical moment, the Wolfpack leaped over the wall into the fray, a ferocious blur of fangs and claws. They decimated the front lines of the undead with ruthless efficiency. However, their physical prowess could only take them so far. Lycan signaled for retreat. The Lycans jumped back over the wall to safety, taking a moment to catch their breath. The undead had been significantly thinned out by the skirmish, yet a formidable number still pressed on, posing a severe threat to the outpost defenses. The guards, resembling a phalanx from times long past, used their spears effectively, constantly attacking and repelling the encroaching undead. Just when it seemed the outpost might be overrun, a sudden change occurred. The undead halted their advance and then began to retreat, leaving a solitary figure in their wake. Eldur. He stood with a cold fury, assessing the resilience of the outpost. "I'll come in there and kill you myself. You are all helpless to my power," he threatened with a menacing tone. At that moment, Lycan stepped forward, transforming back into his powerful werewolf form. "Still want to play, little vampire man?" he taunted. Eldur stepped back, his expression one of shock and fear. The presence of Lycans, natural enemies of vampires, posed a real threat he hadn't anticipated. "This isn't the end of this," Eldur shouted, his voice echoing with both threat and retreat as he stepped into the shadows and vanished. A cheer erupted from the outpost. They had survived the siege, and Eldur's retreat marked a significant victory. The defenders, both human and Lycan, celebrated their survival, knowing well that the war was far from over, but for now, they could take solace in their hard-fought triumph. The atmosphere in the outpost was one of jubilant relief. The survivors celebrated their narrow escape from the undead siege. The air was filled with laughter and chatter, a rare sound that had been absent for too long. The members of the wolf pack, led by Lycan and Serana, were heartily thanked and welcomed as heroes. Their bravery and strength had turned the tide, giving everyone at the outpost a new lease on life. As the celebration continued, Captain Harris and other leaders took a moment to speak privately with Lycan. They explained the fall of Fort Haven, detailing how the stronghold was overrun by Eldur and his undead army, a story of loss and desperation. Lycan listened intently, then shared his own tale. "There is a camp, many days' ride from here, where vampires protected the people by calling the undead," he began, his voice low. "Before I left, a major battle was brewing, one where the Alpha was set to try and take over the camp." Captain Harris leaned in, his interest piqued by the mention of vampires using their powers against the undead. Did they have some weapon that could stop the undead in their tracks, hundreds at a time? He asked urgently. Lycan shook his head. "I don't know. We left before the battle many months ago. We traveled for many days, running as fast as we could to escape the call of the Alpha. We settled here because the undead were no longer a threat to us. Until now." The possibility of such a weapon sparked a glimmer of hope among the outpost's leaders. "Could we contact this camp?" Captain Harris asked, thinking about the potential for an alliance or aid. Lycan's expression hardened, and his tone was resolute. "We will not go back there. We will not go near the Alpha," he stated firmly, the memories of their flight and the dangers they had escaped still vivid in his mind. The conversation left the leaders of the outpost in a quandary. The idea of a place with such potent defenses against the undead was tantalizing, yet the risks and the mysteries surrounding it were daunting. For now, they would need to rely on the strength of their new allies and the fortifications of their outpost. As the night drew on, the celebrations died down, and the reality of their situation settled in once more. They had survived another day, but the future was uncertain, and the threat of Eldur loomed large. The outpost would need to prepare, gather resources, and perhaps find other allies if they were to withstand another attack from the cunning vampire and his undead legion. Eldur, brooding on his makeshift throne within the dark confines of Fort Eldur, grimaced at the thought of his recent defeat. "Damn werewolves," he muttered under his breath, his voice dripping with disdain. "What purpose have they ever served? Just nasty feral beasts, running around and howling at the moon." He swore and cursed the werewolves, frustrated by the setback they had caused. Surely, by now my kind would have found a way to deal with these feral beasts, he mused, recalling legends and tales from the darker corners of his long memory. I remember a wise elder, the sage. I am sure he would know how to best these damn things. But the whereabouts of the sage were a mystery, lost to time and the chaos of the world. I will have to deal with them myself somehow. As he contemplated his next move, a familiar and gnawing hunger panged within him. Damn this hunger, Eldur hissed as he rose from his throne. Climbing to the top of his fort, he looked out over the desolate landscape and shouted, "More humans!" A few of the undead, still under his sway, pointed in a direction different from the outpost. A sly smile crept across his lips. Transforming into a shadow, Eldur moved with supernatural speed, his form barely touching the ground as he travelled from one shadow to the next, making the journey almost instantaneously. He covered a long distance in mere moments, arriving at a small farm. It was fortified with a high, strong fence that encircled the entire perimeter. A few of the undead thrashed against the fence to no avail. His shadow form slipped through the fence and surveyed the area. A small group of people lived here, unsuspecting of the dark visitor in their midst. Eldur decided to be cunning. He waited for nightfall, for the farm's inhabitants to sleep, and then he fed. His approach was silent, a ghost of the old days, ensuring that no one would know of his existence. He drank from his victim as they slept, planning to use these people as a sustainable feeding ground. They would feel sick for a few days, but nothing more. He could take turns feeding on them to sustain himself without arousing suspicion. Satisfied and nourished, Eldur quickly returned to his fort. Now with his immediate needs met, his thoughts turned back to the problem at hand. Now to figure out how to deal with the wolves, he pondered, his mind working through strategies, an old lore that might give him the edge he needed to eliminate the Lycan threat once and for all. The battle was far from over, and Eldur was not one to give up his reign without a fierce fight. As the dawn broke over the outpost, Lycan and the wolf pack prepared to depart. "We will return to our den. Sound the alarm if you need aid, and we will hear you," Lycan assured Captain Harris and the other leaders. With a mutual nod of respect, the Lycans disappeared into the forest, their forms melding with the mist. Inside the outpost, Samantha, the logistics expert, laid out a map on a makeshift table. "We need to find that camp," she stated decisively. A small team, consisting of Marco and Jenna, both experienced enough to avoid detection, was quickly assembled. They did not have exact coordinates, only the general direction provided by the wolf pack. After heartfelt farewells, they set off on foot, their mission clear but fraught with uncertainty. The outpost had exhausted all its biofuel, and the process to make more was back at Fort Haven. Guards rationed the remaining ammunition and sturdy weapons to Marco and Jenna as they departed. Captain Harris, Samantha, and Commander Lewis watched them leave, each harboring a silent hope. "Let's hope they find this place," Harris murmured. Meanwhile, Eldur sat in the dim light of Fort Eldur, surrounded by ancient runic symbols drawn on the floor. Desperate for a connection with any remaining elders, he resorted to an ancient method of communication, long considered outdated. Whispering in the dark tongue, he focused his energy, allowing his shadow to spread through the world, searching every crevice for an elder connection. "Sage, are you there? Wisest of us all, I need your help," he intoned, but the silence that followed was deafening. Suddenly, he felt another presence. A shadow many miles away. Another elder still lived, yet unknown to him. Eldur reached out through the shadows of the world. "I am Eldur." Eldur. I seek union with my kind. I am in need of assistance. Silence followed his plea. Weak and frustrated, Eldur prepared to abandon his ceremony, determined to feed before trying again. As he rose, a figure emerged from the shadows, an elder vampire, her presence as cold as it was unexpected. "I hear your call," she said, her voice echoing softly in the dim chamber. "Who are you?" Eldur demanded. "My name is Serana," she replied calmly. "The sage is dead, sacrificing himself for the humans." "For humans?" Eldur scoffed, incredulous. "That cannot be. They are but prey to us." "In a world of rotting undead, one must adapt or perish," Serana countered. "How have you survived?" "The old ways. I feed without being noticed, like a parasite. There is a group of survivors where I am from. I feed when I need to, but just enough that they do not notice me, like the old days." Eldur frowned, considering her methods. "And what about Lycan? Have we figured out how to kill these yet?" Serana looked at Eldur, her expression grave. "We must stay clear of the Lycan. They were created to keep the elders in check. In the Lycan outbreak, we lost many elders." "There was a Lycan outbreak?" Eldur asked, a hint of curiosity in his tone. "Yes, before the undead. It devastated many," Serana explained. "Interesting." Eldur mused, a new thought forming in his mind. "Then these are not true blood Lycan, but a weakened link from the lineage." Serana nodded, confirming his suspicion. "Exactly. We must be cautious, Eldur. They may not be the ancients, but they are dangerous nonetheless." As the conversation unfolded, plans and strategies began to form, with Eldur realizing that he might have found not just an ally, but also valuable insights into handling the threats surrounding them. At the outpost, the need for additional supplies became urgent. With most of the undead now drawn towards Eldur's fort, the nearby town, usually teeming with danger, appeared less threatening. The team decided to capitalize on this opportunity. "We can raid the place for any leftover supplies. With practically zero undead there, it's our best chance," suggested a team member named Tom. "We'll go at night and use the darkness to hide us." Two members, Tom and his companion Lisa, set off under the cover of darkness. Their first target was the local drugstore, in hopes of finding medicines, antibiotics, and more. As they entered the town, they encountered only a few stray undead, which they easily avoided, slipping past them with practiced stealth. Inside the drugstore, they rummaged through the shelves and discovered a small supply of outdated pills and drugs. "Better than nothing," Lisa remarked, stuffing the find into her backpack. As they were about to leave, an ominous voice echoed through the dimly lit store. "Going somewhere?" The chilling tone froze them in their tracks. Serana stepped out from the shadows, her eyes gleaming with malice. "He said you'd try this. Guess it's a free lunch for me," she taunted. Before they could react, Serana was upon them. In seconds, she drained the blood from Tom, leaving his lifeless body slumped on the cold floor. Lisa, paralyzed with fear, was quickly incapacitated by Serana's swift movements. Just then, two shambling undead entered the store, grabbing Lisa. "Share and share alike," Serana remarked, as they began dragging her back towards Fort Eldur. Sometime later, Lisa was thrown at the feet of Eldur inside his fort. "For me?" Eldur quipped, a twisted smile playing on his lips. "You shouldn't have." He then bent down to drink greedily from the terrified woman, extinguishing her life with a deep, satisfied gulp. Serana appeared beside him, watching with cold detachment. "Well, that's two less," she commented. Eldur, still smiling from his feast, gave a nod of approval. "Reinforce the surrounding wall. I don't want those flea-bitten mutts getting in here for revenge," he ordered, his voice carrying a mix of caution and disdain. The grim scene set a darker tone within Fort Eldur. Eldur and Serana, united in their predatory pursuits, reinforced their defenses, preparing for any retaliation the outpost might muster. The line between survival and savagery blurred further in the shadowy world they dominated. Back at the outpost, Captain Harris paced anxiously. Tom and Lisa had been gone far too long, and a sinking feeling gnawed at his gut. I doubt they were stopped by the undead. I feel something else is at play. How could they survive against that vampire? He muttered to himself, voicing the concern that had been plaguing him since their departure. "We need to send out a rescue team," he announced, determination lining his voice. "Wait," interjected Samantha, her expression tense with thought. "If he's attacked once, he could do it again. Maybe we should ask the wolf pack for help." Sometime later, members of the wolf pack arrived, responding swiftly to the outpost's call for assistance. Captain Harris quickly briefed them on the situation. Understanding the gravity of the circumstances, the wolf pack agreed to assist, with one member, Freya, volunteering to accompany the rescue team in human form to avoid alarming any survivors. With two new members from the outpost, Derek and Nina, alongside Freya, the team headed out to the small town. They passed the few wandering undead with ease and entered the drugstore. There, on the floor, was Lisa's backpack, abandoned amidst a scene of disarray. "Something must have happened," Derek murmured, his voice heavy with concern. "We'd better be careful." "Oh, you need to be more than careful, my dear," a dark voice murmured from the shadows. Serana emerged, her presence as menacing as the cold chill that swept through the room. "Who the hell are you?" Nina demanded, her hand instinctively reaching for her weapon. "It really doesn't matter," Serana replied dismissively as she launched towards the team. In that instant, Freya shifted into her Lycan form, her transformation swift and startling. With a powerful swipe, her claws caught Serana off guard. "How dare you?" Serana hissed, nursing her wounded arm. Overcome by the unexpected resistance and the potency of her opponent, she merged with the shadows and quickly retreated. The team, shaken but unharmed, quickly gathered Lisa's backpack and made their way back to the outpost. Upon their return, they relayed the entire encounter to Captain Harris and the rest, confirming the fearsome capabilities and the presence of another elder, Serana. "We need to be prepared. There's another elder vampire involved," Captain Harris concluded, his voice grim. "This complicates things, but it also means we must strengthen our ties with the wolf pack. We're not just fighting a battle. We're in the midst of a war against an ancient and powerful enemy." The revelation set a new course for the outpost's strategy, deepening their resolve to stand together against the dark forces assembling against them. At Fort Eldur, tension was high. Serana approached Eldur with a fierce glare, her frustration palpable. "The Lycan aid the humans. I'm out of this fight. I don't want anything to do with those beasts," she declared, her voice echoing through the cold stone halls. "Wait," Eldur responded calmly, a sly grin spreading across his face. "I have a plan for those stray dogs. Follow me." He led Serana to the middle of the fort, through the human settlements they had overtaken. The place was surprisingly well equipped, boasting farms, fresh water, and even a weapons forge, the remnants of human ingenuity and desperation. "Look here," Eldur said, as they entered the smithing area that the humans at Fort Hope had used to craft their weapons. "While you were gone, I did a little crafting of my own." He unsheathed a crudely made dagger, its metallic surface glinting ominously in the dim light. "Here, a gift for you. It's made from silver." Serana raised an eyebrow. Intrigued. "Scratch me," she said with a smirk. "This is perfect. Can we make more?" "Yes," Eldur exclaimed, pleased with her reaction. He explained that he had found a stash of silver in an old storage room, likely overlooked by the humans during their hasty fortification of the fort. Meanwhile, Marco and Lydia continued on their path, hopeful they were heading in the right direction. After some time, they found a small town where the undead were sparsely scattered. "Let's see if we can find a secure home for the night," Marco suggested. "Yes, we need rest," Lydia agreed. Stealthily, they navigated the town to avoid detection. Climbing a wall to an old home, they entered by climbing up and through a bedroom window. "Clear," Marco whispered after a quick sweep of the house. "Clear," Lydia confirmed as they checked the entire house. They quickly secured the doors, set traps on the stairs, and bedded down for the night. They awoke early, refreshed. "I needed that," Marco said as they prepared to leave. Just then, Lydia noticed a set of car keys hanging on a key hook. She grabbed them and looked at Marco with a grin. "No way." They headed to the adjoining garage. Pulling off the protective cover, they found a small car, a practical and modest make, perhaps a Honda Fit, full of fuel. "Oh, I thought it was going to be one of those muscle cars," Marco joked, slightly disappointed. "This is even better. It will last much longer," Lydia countered, her practicality shining through. Moments later, Marco and Lydia sped off in the direction of the supposed camp, their goal closer than ever before. As they left the town behind, the dawn broke, casting a hopeful light on their journey. This small car, unassuming yet reliable, symbolized a new beginning, a chance to outrun the shadows of their past and drive towards a future that was slowly coming into clearer view. Coming soon, Part 3, Crimson Dawn Series 2. As shadows lengthen and the struggle for survival intensifies, what fate awaits Marco and Lydia on their perilous journey to uncover a mysterious camp? Will they discover new allies or face unexpected threats in their quest for hope? Back at Fort Eldur, Eldur and Serana arm themselves with dark intentions and even darker weapons. With silver at their disposal, can they devise a plan sinister enough to threaten the formidable wolf pack? The ancient enmity between vampire and Lycan is set to reach a boiling point. Meanwhile, Eldur's mastery over the undead grows as he delves deeper into the forbidden arts of necromancy. How will his burgeoning power affect the survivors of Fort Hope? Can they find a way to protect themselves against a force that commands death itself? Tensions rise, alliances are tested, and the line between friend and foe blurs in the upcoming continuation of the Crimson Dawn Series 2. Stay tuned for a tale of courage, betrayal, and the undying will to survive in a world where the dawn is as crimson as the blood on which it rises. Coming soon. Thank you for joining me on this chilling journey. If your thirst for the unknown and the unexplained is still unquenched, I invite you to delve deeper into the abyss of terror. Just beyond the veil of reality, another story awaits to send shivers down your spine. Dare to join me in the next video, where the unknown becomes known and the unseen seen. Until then, keep the lights dim and your mind open. This is Professor Shadow, signing off.